All right, this is my daughter's little quad. And what happened is the wheels are not moving, but it's going. So when you hit the gas, the wheels aren't doing anything, but you could hear it trying to spin. So what happens here is these little white bushings, they get stripped out on the inside. So in order to get the wheels off, I already did this one. I just get a nice pair of pliers. I just pull it off. And then I get the white cap and you just pull it off. And then that little lock washer will be on there as well. And I just grab it and pry it all off. It all comes off. When you go to put it back on, this might be a little worn out. So I'll kind of just flatten it with a hammer and that should make do to get it back on. Or they sell replacements at Ace Hardware. It's a little hard to do with one hand. Basically, if you just rock it and twist it and turn it, it'll come off. Whew, that was a lot of work. Hardest part is getting that off. For me anyways. It's a little banged up, but I'll just flatten it back down with a hammer and it'll hold, believe it or not. And there's the donor piece. Put that on the rear, good to go. And once you get all this stuff off, the wheel slides right off. And this is the problem. This ridge spins on this coupling. And as you can see in there, it's all stripped out. I actually tried to reverse it. I tried to swap this one and this one, but it didn't do the trick. So it's just spinning and spinning. It's just spinning on there. So what you want to do is go up to the front and steal the spacer from the front. Nice and fresh, not stripped. And then you can put the stripped one on the front because it doesn't need the gear to spin. That just sits there. And that'll fix it up for you. you're basically just stealing the front shims, putting them on the back. And as you could tell, I have the upgraded 12-volt battery. All right, once you have one wheel off, you could just slide this out completely. All you're doing is making sure that these grooves and the grooves that are down over here are going to slide through. So just got to kind of turn it as you pull it out. Get that guy off. Now it's free to come out. And if it doesn't pull straight out, you just kind of spin it a little. Until she comes out. And then you got the whole axle here. And this side is actually probably even worse. That's where it's spinning. So we'll put the fronts on the back and she'll be good to go. It's gonna fall. Obviously, make sure that's not stripped out. Mine looks a little chewed up, but I think she'll do. Clearly, just hold it back in there when you push the axle through. Just putting it back in, you just kind of push the motor back in where it belongs from underneath while I push the axle back in. And it'll go right through. You just got to spin it a little till you get it in. That notch is in there. So if you look under this spacer, the battery just fell out. There's no notch there, so it doesn't matter that this piece is stripped out. Alright, so that side's in. This side is in. Our new bushing is gonna spin on this plastic piece. And that's it. I just gotta tack on the ends and get it back together. On it's the stripped piece. And that's basically it. I'm just gonna attach the lock washers and it should be good to go. So these metal lock nuts, as you can see, they took a beating getting off. So if you smash them down nice and flat with a hammer, they'll regain their shape and they'll do the trick. And actually, I've even put on the beat up ones and they held on fine. So if you take a little time and smash it down, it'll do the trick. As a side note, I first thought it was going to be the gears in here between the motor and all this. As you can see, there's a couple screws down in there. Once this was all out, I took out all these screws, I opened it up, took the motor off, and everything was fine. And that's what led me to figuring out the white bushings were no good. This is a little bonus on my 6-volt to 12-volt upgrade. I ended up cutting all this out of there in order to fit my 12-volt battery. And then obviously it's pretty simple. You're just going to add a connector onto the black wire and a connector with a fuse for the power wire, and that's the white wire. So white with the fuse is your power, and ground, and that just goes to your new battery, and you light it up. Now the reason this actually broke is not because of the battery, it's because some big kids got on it and stripped out my bushing. So if you keep your little kid on it, you should be alright. This is the battery I ordered off eBay. It's a pretty good little battery. It was cheap, I think it was like 40 bucks. And I use my regular trickle charger for my cars or my motorcycle to charge it. That's how the battery fits in there. And my connector's nice and neat. Alright, believe it or not, when I beat these down, they actually got very hard to put on. So, this is what I had to do. I had to put a little socket on there. And then I just give it a good whack with a hammer, and it popped right on. One whack with a hammer, right on there. You can put it back on, hit a couple more times, get it down nice and snug. It's not going anywhere. You know, when putting those metal things, those metal fasteners back on that we flattened with a hammer, it was pretty tough. So my suggestion would be to try and put them on, even if they're messed up, because they hold really well. And then if they're not holding, then go ahead and flatten it, and you'll have to persuade them back on there. The seat sits a little high from the battery, but I just force it down in the back, and that's all right because this kid zips around.